Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Meiji Book. My name's Gretchen, and today I thought that I would talk to you about some of my favorite winter reads. So today it just so happens to be my birthday, which is November 28th, and for all my life, like as early as I can remember, I've always considered my birthday the official start of winter. I am one that loves autumn and winter. They're my favorite seasons, and I just always associated my birthday with the transition and the official start of fall ending and winter beginning. So although I am fully aware that winter doesn't technically start until December, and well into December, like I said, I've just always kind of associated that my birthday is my official transition. So I thought, why not make a little video today about some of my favorite reads to pick up during those long, cold winter months. And I also thought, why not also show you what I plan on reading myself this winter. So I have 8 books that I'm recommending, and I have 8 books that I am going to try to get to at some point in time this winter. Now, this is not a December TBR or anything like that. These are just some of the books that are on my radar that I'm going to be choosing from in the next few months whenever I'm looking for a good winter read. So let's go ahead and start with those books that I have previously read and that I recommend for anybody looking for one of those atmospheric winter type reads. So the first one that I want to talk about is probably no surprise, knowing my love for the Booker Prize and the books that have been nominated. Last year we had this little gem, which is Small Things Like These, that was nominated. I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure it was shortlisted if I'm thinking correctly, but this is by Claire Keegan, and I am such a Claire Keegan fan. I do not think that she has ever written anything that I have not been impressed with. She is a super succinct author, and she can write a 100-page book that will have you on the biggest emotional roller coaster. It packs so much. The pages are just laden with information and emotion and feeling, and she always manages to get me to cry, and not many authors can do that. So Small Things Like These, if you're not aware, so basically this takes place in the mid-80s, and it is it takes place in the week leading up to Christmas. And we have our main character, his name is Bob, and he is a coal merchant. And as he is going around their Irish town, or his Irish town, he goes to make a delivery or drop off or something to one of the local convents, and he sees something that is very disturbing to him, and it just makes him question so much about what is going on in his country, as well as it brings out a lot of information about the troubled Irish history with the Magdalen laundries, and it's just a stunning novel. It's a super quick read. I mean, it's less than, I want to say it's less than 100 pages. No, actually, I lied. It's just over It's like 115, 116. So I highly recommend this because it's set near Christmas. It is very atmospheric, and even though the subject matter is dense and troubling, it's still like a cozy read just because of, I think, the atmosphere and the time of year. And also, this book is totally not set in summer, but if you read small things like these and you enjoyed Claire Keegan's writing, you absolutely have to pick up Foster. Foster is it's incredible. It's the same type of short story that's just going to pack a powerful punch. It's not set in winter, but if you give this one a chance and you like it, I highly recommend you picking up Foster as well. So the next one is a book that you are likely going to see on a lot of people's, if they do winter recommendation videos, but I think I would be remiss if I didn't include this because this is a book that I return to very often over the years, and I have ever since I was a little kid. This was one of the first novels that I ever read that I can actually remember, and it will forever stay with me, and I will always want to pick it up around this time of year, and that is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. There's nothing more that I can say about Little Women that hasn't been said before. I think everybody knows the basic premise, and it follows the March sisters, the four March sisters, and it takes place in New England, and a good portion of it takes place in the winter months and Christmas time, and it's just such a lovely little story, and it's just an absolute delight. It's so cozy, and it just, it's like one of those books that you just want to hug whenever it's done. It's super sad in moments, but it is delightfully hopeful and optimistic at times, and it just shows, the strength and the courage and just the will that, these women have as they grow up. And also, if you are inclined to read this, or maybe you're not inclined to read it, but you also want to kind of partake in the story, the most recent adaptation that Greta Gerwig did, chef's kiss. It's delightful. It's beautiful, and yeah, highly recommend it. The next one is, I know the last two that I talked about had elements of Christmas because it's set around that time of year, or there are parts of the book that take time during that time of year. This next one is purely atmospheric, and that is Once There Were Wolves. This is by Charlotte McConaghy, and basically this book follows our main character, Inti. She is a biologist, and her and a team of fellow biologists are traveling to the remote area of the Scottish Highlands because they are trying to reintroduce wolves back into their natural habitat. So previously there were wild wolves in that area, and through, deforestation and all kinds of other things, the wolves eventually left the area, and they want to get them back, get nature back to the way that it should be with wild wolves. Now, once they are there and these wolves are released, there is an event that happens where a local farmer ends up dead, and her biggest fear is that the town, who wasn't too keen on these wolves coming in the first place, again, her fear is that the wolves are going to be the ones that are to blame for the death of that farmer. So it's an interesting story. There's also a little bit of there's a little bit of a love story in there. It's really interesting. You learn a lot about wolves and their behavior. So once again, this novel does something that I love, which is it forces me to go and learn a little more about things I didn't know. So this forced me to pick up books or read more about wolves and how they survive, and the history of areas within the world that once had thriving populations of certain animals that have now basically gone extinct in those areas, and how reintroducing them back into nature can impact local areas. So it's a kind of a thrillery type read. There's a it being set in the Highlands of Scotland in the winter. It's very atmospheric. There's a lot of, it makes you feel chilled to the bone at times. And it's not just because of the atmosphere, it's also because of this undercurrent of dread and suspense that's kind of weaving its way through the narrative. So very interesting book, and I highly recommend. Now, the next one, so hear me out with this one. So this one actually technically doesn't take place in the winter. I think it eventually gets to winter, but it kind of starts in the fall, but it does talk about the weather and it being cold, and it is very bleak and desolate, and it just kind of makes me feel very wintry in nature. And this is a book that I have not really heard people talking about on this on YouTube. So I'm curious if maybe I'm just the one person that actually enjoyed this book, or if maybe not a lot of people have heard of it. But it is The Line That Held Us by David Joy. And this book is, I've heard it referred to as Gitlet. And basically it's a tough story, but it's a very good story, and it's very propulsive and engaging. And basically we have a man, his name is Daryl, and he is he lives in I think it's the Appalachian part of North Carolina, and he is trying to prepare for winter. So he lives in a very rural area, very poor, and basically if he can't go out and hunt and find food, then he's going to have issues throughout the winter staying fed. So he's out one day hunting for boar, and he goes to shoot what he thinks is a boar, but it's actually a man that was foraging for ginseng in the woods. And not only is he absolutely mortified that he has just accidentally killed someone, he is shocked to find out that the person that he killed is actually the brother of one of his enemies. And this guy that is his enemy is a very vengeful person. He is known within the town to be ruthless and difficult, and Daryl is like absolutely just beside himself at what happened. So he goes and he gets his friend, I believe his friend's name is Calvin, and they go to bury the body, and the rest of the story just kind of takes place as the town finds out that there's a man that's missing, and you know, it just all kind of goes to goes down, and it eventually comes to a head, and it's super dramatic, it's super bleak, like I said. It's raw, it is gritty. I can see why this has been referred to as gritlit. It's gonna make you feel uncomfortable at times, but it was just a really good read, and I recommend it. And I hope that in the comments, if any of you have read this, that some of you will kind of validate me, because like I said, I'd never hear about this book, but I really enjoyed it. And I know that he has a few backlisted books, and he actually had a book, I think, that was released this year that I need to get to as well. So The Line That Held Us by David Joy, good book. So the next one is, I think, a pretty common book too, or book series actually, that you would see on a lot of people's wintry reads. And it's also one of my favorites as well. And that is the Btown series by Frederik Backman. Now, I have read all three of them. I think the second one is called Us Against You, and the third one is called The Winners, which I think was just released last year. And I really loved this series. It's not a happy read by any means. It's actually devastating at times. There's a lot of horrific things going on in here. There's trigger warnings for assault. There's trigger warnings for suicide. There's trigger warnings for sexual assault as well, not just assault. But it's a beautiful story that ties the entirety of a community together. So basically we have Btown, which is this small Swedish town. It's very rural, and we basically have this town whose pride and joy is their local hockey team. And the main kind of character, this is one of those books where I struggle to say that there's a main character. It's just it's got a bunch of primary characters, not necessarily one main. But one of the storylines follows Peter, who is the coach of the hockey team, and his family. He has a son and a daughter. His daughter is Kira, and his wife is, I forget what his wife's name is, but she is a lawyer. And then we follow another storyline, or another family, with the mom that is the cleaning lady at the ice rink, and her son, who is like this hockey phenom. And then we follow another family who is like the rich affluent family within the neighborhood or the town, and their son Kevin, who is their hope for an NHL player coming out of the town. And it's such a messy oh, and then there's another storyline where we have another family, basically a family of sisters and a brother named Benji. You know, they lost their father. and they're basically like taking care of each other. And it's just such a lovely, like I said, it's just a lovely story of community. And even though there are absolutely horrific things happening, the way that these characters interact with each other, the relationships and the bonds that some of them have, this is like, it is like a soap opera almost, in the sense of all of the ongoings and the connections and the messiness. I mean, soap opera, to me, it always sounds like a very cheesy and campy word to use. I'm not using that term to describe this. This is all very adult situations. These are all very tragic and troublesome and complicated situations. But I just think that Frederik Backman does such an amazing job of character development and making you as the reader sympathize and understand characters' intentions, their inner thoughts, and you really do end up walking away from this series feeling like some of these people are part of your family and you know them. And obviously why I think this is such a good winter read is it takes place in a remote area in Sweden. Most of it is set in the winter. You're always hearing about the cold and the snow. And, you know, it's about hockey. So, you know, hockey is definitely something I associate with winter. And yeah, it's a great series. I'm trying to think if I had to pick my favorite. The winners absolutely had me in tears, which is the last one. Like the last probably 50 pages of that book, I had to take a break because it was so sad. But yeah, that's another series that's good for those long, bleak, cold winter days. Now the next one, so the next two are kind of, they have a commonality between them. The first one is going to be Dr. Zhivago by Boris Pasternak. I read this book for the first time when, oh my gosh, I think I was like 13 or 14. I have no idea what possessed me to pick up Dr. Zhivago. I definitely was not of the age where I had enough life experience to appreciate this book, but what I do remember from this book is just how atmospheric and magical it seemed, the way that Pasternak described the Russian wilderness and landscape, and also this book focuses on war and the Russian Revolution, and that also adds a bleakness and a sterility to this book as well. And it follows our main character, Dr. Zhivago, or Yuri, and his lover, Alara, and they're both married to other people, and their love story and kind of all of that messiness that goes along with an affair. And like I said, I definitely wasn't probably the correct age demographic to read this at the time, but I do remember just how mesmerized I was by it. It is an epic story. It's not as long as a lot of the chunkier Russian novels, but it is very dense. There's a lot going on in here. Like any Russian novel, you're going to have issues with characters having multiple names. You almost have to write a little like family tree or character list out to keep everything straight. But once you get into it, it gets easier along the way to pick up. And also, one other thing, I know I talked about this with Little Women, but once you are done reading the book, or if you don't want to read the book but you still want to participate in the story, of course there was the movie with Omar Sharif. I believe he won Best Actor for that movie, and that will definitely put you in the bleak winter mood, because it's such a beautiful, it's a visually beautiful movie with all of the snowy landscapes and that. So yeah, Dr. Zhivago. And then I have two more books that are my recommendations, and they just so happen to be two of my favorite books of all time. These two would definitely be in my top 10. One of them is actually probably my second favorite book of all time. But the first is along the lines of Pasternak. We have a Tolstoy, and that is Anna Karenina. So this book I read for the first time in high school, and I hated it. I was like, why on earth are you subjecting children to this? This is just torture. It is a super long book. It's confusing with all of, like I said, the names, a person being called 14 different names, or different variations, people that are different people called the same thing. Like, it's just super confusing. And the subject content, like, I don't think it's a secret. Most people know how Anna Karenina ends, but the subject matter, that's kind of rough for, you know, a kid in high school. Like, that's a lot. And I think that my biggest thing with the book is when I revisited it last year, like, I did it kicking and screaming because I was not happy about this, but thank goodness that Ben from the Hardcore Literature book club, this was actually his first book club selection. So I started with his book club at the beginning, and even though I didn't want to do it, I did it, and oh my God, I adore this book. Now that I am older, and I have life experience, I can appreciate this book so much more for what it is. It is a sweeping saga. It has so much drama in it. It has so much life and humanity, and there is everything in here. There's betrayal, there's death, there's cheating, adultery, there's revenge. There's so much in here, and it's sumptuous, and it is just something that you will devour, but pace yourself if you do read it, because Tolstoy is best enjoyed very slowly, and I took my time with this, and I think because I took my time that I just learned to appreciate it so much more. And although this book isn't solidly set in winter, it is very much winter feeling for me, especially toward the beginning of the book with one of our characters, Levin, Levin. There's a scene with him at very close to the beginning where he is at an ice rink, And first of all, it's beautifully written. The writing is just gorgeous, but it was so atmospheric, and I could actually like close my eyes and imagine that I was at that ice rink seeing everything happen. So that's a testament to Tolstoy's writing. It's also a testament to the translators. One thing that I will say is when I was in high school, I read the Constance Garnett translation. The Richard Purveer and the Larissa Volokhonsky version is stellar. It is so much, I hate to say that it's so much better than the Constance Garner, but it's so much easier to digest. And also, one thing I will say about the Constance Garnett edition is if you want to like maybe go on a long stroll in the snow, Maggie Gyllenhaal narrates the Constance Garnett version, and she does a lovely job with that. And it's very nice to kind of think about walking through a wintry street or a wintry wood, listening to that scene with Levin and Kitty at the ice rink. So yeah, another great book. And this definitely is one of those things that could get you through the winter. And it's definitely long enough to keep you going. Like if you start it soon, you know, it could be your friend or your companion through the rest of winter. And then last but not least, we go from a chunker to a very skinny little novel. And this is, my heart is always with this book. This is one of my favorite books of all time. And I don't know what that says about me, because this is one of the saddest, bleakest, most tragic books that I have ever read, but I love it. And that's Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton. I don't know what it is about this book, but it gets me every time. I just think that this is one of the books that has a true story written all over it for me. I can see the majority of these events happening. Now, some of them, maybe the ending, not so much, but this, I think there are so many people in this world that could connect to, and could look to Ethan Frome as an example. And it's just, yeah, I adore this story. So for those of you that are not familiar, so Ethan Frome, it takes place in snowy New England. You can see all the snow on the cover, and it basically follows Ethan. He is a farmer, but Ethan is the type of person, he's smart. He had bigger plans for his life, but he ended up settling down with, actually, this is kind of gross, his cousin, Zena, and they were married. It's a loveless marriage. Neither one of them was really, I don't think there was ever any love in the marriage at all. They basically just exist in the marriage. There's no love. It's cold. It's, you know, it's sterile. It's not what he is looking for. He's a more passionate person. He's sensitive. He, like I said, is, he almost, seems scholarly and academic if he had had the means, or if he had had the opportunity to do so. He's very thoughtful and pensive. Whereas Zena, she's a hypochondriac, and she is, she emasculates him, and she is condescending to him, and she is basically painted as like this wretch that was just there ruining his life. And he is not courageous enough. He is not brave enough to end things with her. He cares so much about her and what happens to her because she is sick. If he does decide to leave, so he feels like he is being a martyr and he is doing the right thing for her by staying with her, even though it's a detriment to him. So as I mentioned, she's a hypochondriac and she thinks she's ill, and she is so sick that she eventually has her cousin, Maddie, come and stay with them. And very shortly after Maddie comes, Ethan starts to fall in love with Maddie. Maddie is the complete opposite of Xena. She's full of life. She is intelligent. She listens to Ethan. They get along. She encourages him. She's a champion for him. And he looks to her for all of the things that his wife doesn't provide. So very quickly, he becomes infatuated with her and he develops this love for her. And from there, the story just gets so sad and so tragic, and it's all set in the backdrop of a New England winter, and it's a great winter read. Like I said, I know there's going to be people that question my sanity for saying this is one of my favorite books, but there will always be a special place in my heart for this. And yeah, it's one that I revisit all the time, and it is super short. So yeah, give it a chance. And yeah, I hope that if you do, you love it and you don't think that I'm insane. So those are the books that I recommend. So let's move on real quick to the ones that I plan on reading. So the first one is The Greenglass House. So this is actually middle grade. I don't read middle grade very often, but this one just seems super cozy. It takes place in this large hotel in the mountains, and there are some unexpected guests that kind of come into the inn, and then there's this mystery that these children need to solve, and it just sounds super cozy. And like the cover is beautiful. It's so wintry with the snow on the roof. And so yeah, I think that this will be a really sweet, cozy read, and potentially one that you could enjoy with your kids if you have them. The next one is Snow Country by Yasunari Kawabata. And this one is, I think that it's about a man who's like tired of the hustle and bustle in Tokyo, and he decides that he is going to move to this more remote rural area in hopes to meet up with this geisha that he thinks he's fallen in love with. So that's just kind of their story. I don't know much more about that. I know that I've heard really good things about this book. It's super short. This is probably a one-sitter. And yeah, it has snow in the title, so I'm assuming it's going to be a good winter read. The next one is Cold Enough for Snow by Jessica Au. I know it has snow in the title. I don't know too much about this book. I actually think, if I'm honest, I think I've heard people say that this is set in autumn, but you know, it says cold enough for snow, so I'm assuming there's going to be some talk about weather. There's going to be, you know, maybe some atmospheric parts of it happening. And I think that this just follows a trip that a mother and a daughter take to Tokyo, and it's just about the conversations that they have. I don't know too much more about that, but once again, this is another one I've heard excellent things about, so I'm going to try to give it a chance this winter. Next, we have Snow Falling on Cedars by David Gutterson. This is, I believe, set in the 50s, and it takes place in like the Pacific Northwest of the States, and there is I think a local fisherman on this island that ends up dead, and the town ends up blaming or accusing a Japanese American man of the crime. And it follows like the trial of what happens during all of the testimony and things like that. And also I heard that it touches on like all the atrocities that happened in this specific town during, World War II with the Japanese population. I'm assuming it has something to do with internment camps. So yeah, that's another one that I think is going to be a good winter read with a dark, bleak kind of subject matter. Next we have The Snow Child by, I think it's Owen. I think it's Owen or maybe Eowyn Ivy. This was actually a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize, which I was not aware of, but yay her. That's awesome. Basically, this book, I think, is more kind of like fable, almost fairy tale type. There's a couple in Alaska. I think this is set in the 20s in Alaska, and it's a childless couple. They're married, but their marriage is kind of faltering, and they, on a whim, one snowy night, decide that they're going to build a snow child. And they build the snow child, and when they get up the next morning, the snow child is gone. But then they also see that there's a little girl that is mysteriously running through the woods. And that's all kind of the more I know about it. But that sounds really interesting. And it definitely sounds like it fits the atmospheric winter scene. So I've had this on my TBR for a while. I've been meaning to get to it, but I think this winter I'm finally going to make it a priority. We also have, there is two books on here in my list that are actually from authors that I previously talked about books as recommendations. And the first one is going to be Antarctica by Claire Keegan. This is a short story collection. And I know that probably only one of the short stories is set in winter, but it's not gonna stop me from reading it. It's called Antarctica, and I know there's at least one winter read in here, and it's by Claire Keegan, so win, win, win. We also have another book by Charlotte McConaghy, and that is Migrations. So Migrations, from what I know, it is going to take place on a ship that is headed to I think the Arctic, and basically we have our main character that is following the migration pattern of a bird on its final migration because it's about to be extinct. So once she is on this ship, she convinces the captain of this ship to let her on so that she can follow the flight pattern. And as she's on there, there starts to be some things that come out about her mysterious past, and she starts to kind of have like PTSD, like incidents and things like that. So I'm interested to get into it. It's obviously giving me winter vibes with the cover. So yeah, looking forward to that one. And I did love When There Were Wolves. So I'm hoping that I like this one just as much. And last but not least, we have a new release. And that's called The Prospectors, and there is a little bit of, sorry, there's like gold foil on this cover, so it's hard to see with the glare from the light. But The Prospectors by Ariel Djanikian, and this is basically, it follows our main character. Her name is Alice. She is living in California, and her brother-in-law just so happens to be a part of a group that discovers gold in the Yukon. So she picks up her life and she moves up to the Yukon during the height of the Klondike Gold Rush. And basically it's the story of her and her sister and brother-in-law and how they, you know, come into gold. And then I think this also jumps ahead to maybe Alice's great-great-great-granddaughter, or maybe just great-great-granddaughter in current day, and how she lives with the effects of everything that happened during that time. So that also sounds very interesting, very wintry, and the cover is beautiful. And yeah, I was happy to find something that was a newer release to get on this video. So I'm sorry that this was so long. I know it was ambitious for me to talk about 16 books, but I wanted to make sure you had some tried and true recommendations for me, or from me, and then ones that I will want to get to. So if you are interested in reading any of these books, please let me know. If you have any specific winter recommendations for me that I haven't mentioned, let me know in the comments. If you liked this video, please go ahead and like and subscribe. And until next time, bye!